The first reading has been taken from the book of Ecclesiastes, and this book belongs to a collection of more books called the Books of Wisdom. And I know that sometimes when we think about someone who is wise, we think a wise person is someone who possesses great knowledge and a great amount of knowledge. But in the world of the Bible, wisdom has to do with a very practical knowledge. A practical knowledge of how you're meant to conduct yourself in life. It's not about how much you know, but how well do you conduct yourself in life. So, what good advice could we take for the first reading? What practical knowledge could we take from this reading of the book of Ecclesiastes? Such a beautiful and well-known passage. And the book is saying, there's a time for everything. And this makes me think about how sometimes when bad things happen to us, normally bad news come together. And sometimes when bad things happen to us, we start to sink into a situation and an emotional state of negativity. And it seems to us that everything around us is dark. And everything around us is unfortunate. And then is when we start using what I call dangerous adverbs. What do I mean by this? It's when we start using the words never and always. Those are very dangerous adverbs. Think about it. When you start to go in a unfortunate place, you start saying, this is never going to change. People are always going to be like this. This person will always act that way. Or I will never be able to overcome this situation. And that happens when we forget that there's a time for everything. That happens when we forget that there's a time for difficulties, but there's also going to be a time for victories. I see many seminarians here, and I've been in my own formation process. And there are difficult times in the formation process. And sometimes when we are unable to see that there will be good times after these difficult times, we start saying, if this is going to be like this always, this is not for me. If people are going to treat me this way, this is not for me. So the first encouragement would be, never allow yourself to be sunken too deeply in those difficult moments that you start using those dangerous adverbs. Always be mindful when you start thinking or saying always and never. And the second advice that I think can also be useful is, although we are all on the same day, it is Friday for all of us and we all celebrate St. Vincent de Paul, it is true that we're all going through a different time. For some of us, today is going to be a day of great joy. For others, perhaps today is going to be a day of healing or weeping. And why is this important? Because for communication between peers, between spouses, between colleagues, it's so important to recognize what is the time that the other person is living. Because sometimes we get only focused on what time am I living. But good communication between us supposes that we know what is the time that the other person is living. And how many difficulties, discussions, quarrels could be solved or avoided if we learn to be more mindful of what moment is the other person going through. So brothers and sisters, number one, avoid and be suspicious of those dangerous adverbs when you use them, in your thoughts or in your speech. And second, remember that although we're on the same day, today it's Friday for all of us, we're all going through a different moment. And it's important for good communication to be mindful of what moment is my brother, my spouse, my brother seminarian, my sister in the household is going through.